All right, here we go. We have former NBA player Richard Dumas in the building. Thank you. Thank you for coming to Vlad TV.
No problem.
Okay, and you have a very, very interesting story when it comes to your life in the NBA and the heights that you got to getting to the NBA Finals and everything else like that. So, since it's your first time here, I want to start in the beginning. So, you were born in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you grew up
1960,
in Tulsa.
1969, May 19th.
Okay, and you grew up in Tulsa.
I stayed there till I was like 5 years old. And then my father got drafted to Vietnam. So he was gone. So my mother moved. We actually moved to Astoria, Oregon for like 2 months, 3 months. Then eventually we moved to St. Louis, where I just grew up from like kindergarten all the way up to junior high. So like 8th grade, I was in St. Louis. Then we moved back to Tulsa, my high school days.
Okay, and your dad played basketball as well, Richard
Yeah.
Dumas.
Yes,
Okay, this was in the American Basketball Association.
right.
Okay, and how good was he?
Honestly, I was a kid, but what everybody told me that he was pretty good. They said he was pretty good.
Okay.
Hey, he made it to the big time, so he must have been all right. Considering
Okay, who do you think was better, you or him?
I always think I'm better than everybody. You got to. Well, you have to have that mentality if you want to be the best.
Nah, I feel you. I feel you. Okay, so you jumped around a bit, but you ended up back in Tulsa again. And what was that experience like?
The bouncing around, I enjoyed it because I got to travel the world. But moving back to Tulsa, it was all right because that's where I'm from. I had a lot of kin folks down there, and I have a lot of friends. I know there's people there that knew me from when I was a kid, not from just a basketball player. So they actually got to know me. So I have a little more confidence in them than I do other people because they actually know who I am.
Okay, and you ended up being 6'8" eventually, but in high school, were you that tall or did that come later?
Actually, my freshman year, I was 5'10". I actually played point guard because everybody was taller than I was. By the end of the year, I was 6 foot. I came back around 6'1". I left my sophomore year 6'3", came back 6'4", came back my senior year 6'6", left 6'7". I had
Okay,
growing pains.
so you just kept growing every year by a couple of inches, which in high school is pretty rare.
Yes.
Okay, and were you a natural at basketball, or was it a lot of coaching and training along the way in high school?
Athletic wise, I was always athletic. But actually what it came down to, my favorite sport was actually football. When I was in St. Louis, my mother had me signed up for a youth association where I played football, baseball, and basketball. She could afford it, so I was good at all three sports. I was pretty much the man in all three sports. But once we moved back to St. Louis, we ended up having to move in with my grandfather, so I wanted to play football and baseball and basketball again, but they gave me one choice. See, we can't afford to play all of them. So you got to make a choice. I guess I made a good choice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And growing up, were you a fairly good kid, or were you getting in trouble and getting mixed up in the streets?
A little bit of both. I was all right in school. My grades were good. You didn't have to worry about the grades. But outside of school, I was deviant. I'm not gonna lie. I was always getting in trouble. It's stuff. But as I got older, I realized it was something I couldn't control as I got older. You know, back then they called it ADHD or something like that, and it gave me Ritalin and stuff to calm me down and all that stuff. But I was bad, man. I was deviant. I ain't gonna lie.
Okay, so in terms of bad, was it just getting
I
sent to
was
the
I
office
was
and getting
destro-
suspended,
dis-
or getting arrested and
destroying property, stealing. I never got arrested at that young age. That didn't come until I was in college. But I was stealing stuff. I was destroying property, just not doing what I'm supposed to do. Because my mother had to work basically 2 jobs sometimes. So basically, I was free, to do what I can. That's unless she found out I was gone.
In terms of drugs, was this something you started dabbling in early in life, or did that come later?
Actually, at 8, when I was around 5, about 4 or 5, my daddy used to give me a beer all the time because I couldn't sit still. That's that ADHD, so they call it. So they'd give me a beer. My dad'd give me a beer just to calm me down. Because actually back then, that's when I actually started. I used to light my grandfather's cigarettes, so I started smoking cigarettes too at the age of 5. But as I moved to St. Louis and I got away from my aunt's house, because that's how I got the beer. I was at my aunt's house. I ended up meeting up with some guys. So that's when I dabbled into marijuana at about the age of 13, 12 or 13. I got into the marijuana thing, the weed thing, and did that. And that's all I did all the way up until I got to high school. But I always had an addictive mentality though, because I used to take my mother's pills too sometimes too.
Okay, so you said you did weed up to high school. What happened in high school?
Well, actually in high school, it was my sophomore year. Got started. We got to start playing basketball and everything. Well, there was a store by us. I found out I could buy a beer out the store and stuff because I'm like, okay, well, ever since high school that year, because I was just getting in the spotlight a little bit, and I don't really like the spotlight because I don't really like being around a lot of people and all that stuff. So I was like, man, we have the game. I was real nervous. So I drank about 3 beers one day right before the game, and I had a good game. And after that, I just started having a few beers before every game ever since I was 15. But then when I got to 18, I was still smoking weed and all that. A so-called friend of mine, he's the one that introduced me to the crack cocaine because it was supposed to have been a joint, just a regular joint, but I didn't know he had laced it because I was always afraid to even try the stuff because I saw all the pictures and everything. But, I tried it because I didn't know what it was. And after that, I got addicted to that. I was like, oh, I'm off to the races on that. And that's how all of it got started.
Okay, because growing up in the 80s, you saw what crack was doing. It was destroying.
Yeah, and I was afraid of it. I was actually afraid of it until I tried it, until I accidentally tried it.
Okay, what was that first high like?
It was the best one. That's what's the high. That's why everybody keeps trying to chase it, that first one. One is too many, 1,000 not enough.
Yeah. Okay. So you tried crack for the first time at 18. Yeah. And were you already in college at this point or still in high school?
No, I was on my way I was going to be a freshman that year. It was summertime. I was getting ready to go to college.
Okay, and that was Oklahoma State University.
Right.
Okay, and you had a full scholarship?
Yes.
Okay. In high school, were you like a state champion or a McDonald's All-American?
Our team won state 4 years straight. State 4 years straight. I actually was on 3 other teams, but my freshman year, they won state that year too. Runner-up the year before then. We had legendary times back then where I'm from, North Tulsa. We had some players.
Was there a McDonald's All-American at that point or no?
Yeah, I made the McDonald's All-American team.
Okay, so you were really off to the races. If you make McDonald's All-American, that means that you're very likely to go pro.
Actually, at that point, in high school, actually my goal was just to go to college at that time. I wasn't even thinking about pro basketball. Because I know one thing, my mother said that one of us going to have to get a scholarship. She can't afford both me and my sister going to college. So I ended up doing all the work to get me a scholarship.